Hello, hello, I'm Tracy Pierce. Thanks for joining me here today for this series of mini animal communications. So in the last few months, I've just had a lot of animals coming forward saying they want to tell their story, they want to share their wisdom with the world. And so I've been doing some regular live animal communications to honor that request from my animal friends. And today we're going to talk with a wild rabbit. So let me pull this rabbit's picture up for you. There we go. There's our little rabbits. This was taken just behind my place where I'm living right now. And you know what I do is when I'm walking around, I'm just kind of holding this question above to the ethers, if you will. You know, that if there are any animals that would like to come forward and share their wisdom with the world, please go ahead and do that and present yourself for a photograph. And so this was one of my little animal friends that came forward. So in a second here, I'm gonna just get quiet and start tuning into this rabbit. But if you're joining me live on Zoom, there should be a bar on the bottom there with a button that says chat. So if you have a question for our rabbit friend here, you can type that in. And if you're joining me on Facebook, just type any questions you might have into the chat there, and hopefully I'll see them. Just checking over here to make sure. Sometimes Facebook is just a little weird, the integration, but anyway, I'm just going to get quiet and start tuning into this little rabbit. I'm feeling this rabbit as female. And I feel a real softness in her energy. I feel like this has kind of been a theme the last few weeks with the animals we've talked to. There's been a lot of softness they're bringing forward. So I'm just tuning in a little bit more deeply to this rabbit, seeing if there's anything she would like to share with us or what she would like for us to know about her. She's saying there's this delicate balance in being a prey animal. There's always this awareness that we could be eaten or die at any time. She's saying there's always this kind of awareness in the background. But that doesn't mean that we live our lives in a scared kind of fashion, she says. I hear the word surrender. She's saying there's a way of being surrendered to life that a lot of humans don't understand, is what she's saying. Could you expand on that a little bit? Yeah, it doesn't benefit me to run around in an anxious manner, even though I'm aware that I could be somebody else's dinner at any moment. Like, there's a sense of that being part of the natural cycle for her. Yeah, she's even showing like there's something about dying when you're in this more soft, receptive, gentle kind of orientation of your energy rather than, you know, like getting into, like if there was a battle or something, she's showing like there's a certain way she just kind of lays out herself like, okay, yes, it's time for me to die. It's time for me to be your dinner. Like, okay, here it is. You know, it feels like a really different perspective from how we humans tend to think of life. Like we really want to fight and go after a cause or something like that. Um, Yeah, she's saying that as a whole, she feels like her rabbit breed or species is much more in tune with these life and death cycles. Like we don't fight the death cycles, she says. Do you feel like there's something that we could learn, from you? Or well, she says our energy is not the same. She says, you humans came into this world with human energy for a reason. And I'm not saying that you should totally be like me, like turning yourself into a prey animal. She says humans really are more of a predator, is what she says in her viewpoint. And to just take a more prey kind of stance in life would not be harmonious, is what she's saying, for a human's energy. There is something in like the blueprint of being human, she feels like, that makes our energy like we have to go after something, or she kind of points down this, it almost looks like an arrow, like we want to direct our energy towards something. Is there anything else you want to say about that? I just remembered somebody sent me some, I believe, questions for this little rabbit friend um, ahead of time. Let me double check my notes here. I think we might have some. Yeah, we do. So, Rabbit, this question was sent in by a listener. What do you feel like we humans can do to help you rabbits feel safer around the humans when we're walking by, so you don't necessarily feel like you have to run away? Yeah, the person who wrote this in said that there's a lot of rabbits around her apartment complex and they tend to just run away. What do you think about that, rabbit friend? Well, she says it is part of the prey instinct to move away from predators, and there is this. She's almost showing it like a stamp, but I'm thinking of it as like an imprint in the rabbit's energy that thinks of humans as a predator. So she's showing me like lifetimes and lifetimes of like thousands of years. It seems like she shows me like humans with a rabbit over a spitfire. She's like, humans have eaten rabbits for thousands of years. There's something kind of imprinted in our energy that makes us know that, or think that you guys are predators. She says it doesn't make a difference whether you're a vegetarian or a vegan or something like that in the rabbit stance. So she's saying that she can see, like when a human walks by, she can tell in their energy whether they are a vegetarian or a vegan. She's showing there's this layer kind of close to the human body that um, it vibrates a little bit different, she says, than meat eaters. Yeah, but she says that doesn't necessarily mean that we trust vegetarians or vegans anymore. Like there might be a stop moment of curiosity, like, oh, there's a human that's less of a predator. Um, but she says it is so imprinted in their energy to think of humans as predators that um, she doesn't really see a way for humans necessarily to make the rabbits feel safer. She says, well, you can try holding your energy in a little bit softer kind of way. But I know this apartment complex where this question came from. And what she's showing me, the rabbit is showing me, is there's a lot of very pointed or intent driven kind of action around the apartment building. She says there's not people that are just kind of wandering around to be wandering around. They're walking because they're going to the car, because they're going to go to the grocery store, or they're going to go to their job. Like there's some kind of pointedness, like goal orientedness. Um, and she says it's that sometimes can um, is it trigger? Is that right? Yeah, she says it's almost like, these humans aren't really aware of us. Like if we move and run off, it's more likely to scare them than, we notice them notice us first and then they run off. Like most humans are very focused in whatever they're doing at the moment. Do you feel like there's a way we could hold our energy in a different way that would make you more comfortable when we're walking around? She's like, well, so she's encouraging this person who sent in the question to experiment with um, how soft your energy is when you're walking around the apartment complex, and how pointed, like she keeps calling it pointed, or I see it as like an arrow, a direction, like I'm going to do this goal-oriented thing. There's a way of maybe softening your energy a bit when you're walking around, but she said she feels like that that imprint is so old from humans eating rabbits that it's kind of an ongoing thing. She doesn't know that it can be interrupted. All right, so we've got another question for you, little Miss Rabbit. Have you ever been something else in a prior life? Yes. So she shows me this kind of spiraling up kind of thing. And she's showing, like, I've been all different kinds of animals. Yeah, she's showing, she says she's been a domestic animal one time, but mostly she's been living kind of wild animal lives for quite a while, she says. Yeah, she's showing there's like, so it's not really like this one is above this one or this one, but she's showing like there's this level that sometimes animals, um, like her, she says we come in and we do a lot of wild animal kind of lives, and we see ourselves as really supporting this bigger, like I see this image of the earth, like we're just a part of the whole earth and how the earth moves and supports life and itself. And then she shows like domestic animals are kind of on this different plane of existence that is more about supporting humans. um, yeah, and she says she's more in this wild area right now. Do you have any hopes or aspirations to be a domestic animal? No. I hear that come right away. um, Yeah, she really shows like her place right now. It's not about affecting like individual lives necessarily or having a mission, the way domestic animals do sometime with their humans. She says, she really enjoys being a part of this bigger conglomeration of living beings that make up the whole earth. And there's a particular like vibration and something there that she says, it's not that domestic animals don't have access to it, but they're doing something different. Okay, I've got another question for you. Do you always understand how you are to be once you come into a new life? Well, she says in my particular case, it's almost like there's this 5 million piece puzzle, right, that makes up the whole. And she says I'm just a small piece of the puzzle that comes in, but I'm a part of what makes it whole. And what she's showing is when animals are born and they come in, she's showing there's like this blueprint or this imprint that is already in their energy. It might be, you might call it instinct or innate wisdom. And she says, like, so from that point of view, we do know what we're doing. And a lot of us in the wild animal kingdom, we understand how we're just another piece of the puzzle that contributes to the whole. Yeah, and what she's saying is, she says, domestic animals, she feels like are different from her, in that when they come, she says it's very much, how I just said, how when people are walking around the apartment complex, they have this focus or this arrow pointed at a goal, what they're doing. And she says that domestic animals have more of that kind of sense of things than the wild animals. She's saying we kind of have these different priorities or understanding, but she says when domestic animals come in, it's like, she says they still have that same blueprint kind of thing, but it's almost like there's an extra stamp or two in their energy to show that represents their mission or what they're doing in this life. And so she says, yeah, I mean, there's a sense I understand or I innately know. It's not like I read that blueprint, but I just know that that's what I meant to do here. And she feels like, from what she's seen, that domestic animals have a bit of a different kind of thing, but they do understand when they come into this life what's happening. All right, so I'm looking over here at Facebook to see if we've got any other questions for our rabbit friend here today. All right, so it looks like we have any other questions. So Miss Rabbit, I wonder, is there anything else that you would like to share with us, or definitely want our viewers to know? I felt like you really presented yourself for something you wanted to share. She said, yeah, I really wanted to talk about that difference between the domestic and the wild animals, or the domestic versus the wild animals from my point of view. Do you feel like your view is kind of different from other animals? No, not necessarily. I just wanted to show it to you in this kind of way. I also feel something here about, I used to have this theory that wild animals didn't always like have a very personal feel to like the individual animals, where domestic animals tend to kind of have like a personality, and wild animals sometimes feel more like their archetype or their blueprint for the animal overall. I wonder if there's anything you might like to tell us about that. Seems kind of related to what you said before. Yeah, she's showing there is some crossover. She says, well, like, feel me. I feel like I kind of have an individual voice, but I'm more part of the big puzzle like we talked about before. And she's showing there's sometimes this crossover, like it's not just domestic and then wild animals, and there's this big divide between them. She shows like there's some crossover. She's like, there's some domestic animals that aren't quite as developed or have like a super individual personality, she says, but there are wild animals that have very individual personalities, that, as you've seen, Tracy. So it's kind of like there's this overlapping area. It's not just one or the other. Yeah, she says there are some animals that are, um, yeah, they're just really not interested in humans very much, she says. And yeah, she's showing that, animals that are, it's like they're kind of moving through an evolution process of their own over multiple lives somehow. Um, she's saying, yeah, when an animal decides they want to take on a human as a more direct mission, that's kind of when they start to cross over that threshold. Do you feel like there's something that influences whether animals want to work with humans or to be more wild? She says, that's a very complex question, Tracy. um, Yeah, she says because it's not considered higher or better in her animal kingdom to work with humans necessarily. Yeah, so it is kind of just like a reframing or thinking of things a little bit differently. She says it's, humans do tend to be pretty focused on themselves and their own evolution of their own species and tend to forget about the rest of us. Um, yeah, there is she says it is a special type of animal soul that decides to work with humans in this life, and she's not saying one's better or worse than the other, but in her own experience she's been more on the wild side and has really enjoyed that and feels it really gives something. It adds that piece of the puzzle where you wouldn't see the whole picture otherwise. Thank you so much, Ms. Rabbit. Well, I see we're coming to the end of our time here. I'm going to check for any other comments or questions, and it looks like we don't have any. So thanks again for joining me for this series of free mini animal communications. It's been a really fun way for me to bring to light some of these messages from the animals and share some of their wisdom with you and with the world. So thanks again for joining us, and take care and be well.